Welcome to the Emisarios Unidos de Luz channel. If you enjoy this near-death experience story, consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. Now let's start with the story. I awoke in the middle of the night with a severe migraine. I took a dose of medication that initially didn't seem to have any effect, and contrary to the dosage advice, I took another dose 20 minutes later. The medication made me drowsy, and soon after I fell into a deep slumber, but only a short while after falling asleep, I suddenly awoke, unable to breathe. "Dear God, please don't let me die," I prayed, even though I wasn't certain that God existed. It was then that I suddenly sensed a presence standing next to my bed. An angel of the Lord stood by them, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were sore afraid. I heard a voice say as I lay there terrified. I inferred after hearing the biblical verse that the presence in the room was indeed that of an angel. As I lay there, I began to feel static electricity penetrate my abdomen and ascend through my torso, before I started to dissociate from my body. "You're going to be okay," I heard a voice I recognized as my father's, who had passed away some years prior, repeat. I then became aware of a powerful presence above me, and in my mind's eye, I saw a waterfall, the water of which was crystal clear and the most beautiful hue of blue I had ever seen. As I marveled at the clarity of the water, I watched as a blinding white light danced and sparkled on its surface. I also felt a sensation as though a cascade of love were pouring into my heart, the force of which was so intense that I immediately began to weep. The love filled me with such an overwhelming sense of peace and bliss, that I felt completely liberated from all worries and concerns. I surrendered to that love as I rose above my body to be with that omniscient and unwavering love hovering above me. That existence I realized was God. Even though I desired within the depths of my being to unite with that interminable continuity of absolute love and peace, it concerned me that I would be judged for so recklessly consuming medication, yet that all-powerful presence I sensed was devoid of any judgment. As I merged with that divine love essence, gratitude flowed from within my being for having found the unconditional love that I had been searching for all my life. In the experience of infinite ecstasy, peace, understanding, and grace, I felt as though I had finally arrived home. That perfect love was the absolute, the source of all, and it was within that perfection that I longed to remain. In the experience of unending bliss, it took all my focus to telepathically communicate to the boundless love continuum my desire to remain with it forever. I continued to expand and experience a state of boundless bliss, growing in size until I became one with the entire cosmos. In that state of infinite proportion, I lost all association with my life on Earth, to the degree that I had no recollection of ever having incarnated on Earth. In that experience of pure love's refulgence, I felt as though I was about to explode into a billion atoms to become one with God forever. On the brink of that explosion, however, I received a jolt of electricity that returned to my body. Immediately after the NDE, I noticed that my hair and pillow were wet from the tears, and I noticed that I was breathing normally and that my head was completely free of pain. I have since realized that in the out-of-body experience, I had been assisted by an angel, comforted by the soul that was my earthly father, and that I merged with divinity before returning to my healed body. Because of this miracle, I no longer doubt that God exists, and I no longer fear death. I very much look forward to my return home to be with God. Story 2. While relaxing one evening, I began to feel an overwhelming pain in my chest. In my panicked state, I tried to cry out for help, but because I was having difficulty breathing, my voice was barely audible. As darkness closed around me, I felt as though I was no longer in control of my body and that some force was lifting me upward. Not a moment had passed before I suddenly found myself in a landscape of indescribable beauty, and I wondered if I had been transported to a place that existed outside that of the earthly realm. As I gazed in awe at the celestial landscape before me, a being robed in radiant light, exuding the most serene energy, appeared. The profound peace he embodied, which the entire realm radiated, pervaded my being and filled me with an indescribable sense of tranquility. I felt an uncanny familiarity with the being's presence, and as I approached to determine why he seemed so familiar, I was delighted to realize that his visage closely resembled the popular depictions of Jesus. "I'm not sure how I got here, but I'm so grateful to be here," I thought as Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder, filling me with the deepest love and the most sublime peace. "Yes, my daughter, it is indeed I, your Jesus," he said, his words filling me with such joy that I forgot all the pain and anguish. Jesus and I then began to stroll, and as I walked beside him, he started to reveal things to me about love and about a journey, although since the NDE, I haven't been able to recall the details of our conversation. I do remember, however, that all that he imparted was not only conveyed as words but also as vibrations of love, which I could feel resonate within the very depths of my heart. I remember, as we strolled through fields of blossoming flowers, being overcome by a sense of uneasiness. "Child, it's time to confront the echoes of your life," Jesus said. He then proceeded to show me those moments of my life when I let anger consume me. I cried as I recalled those occasions when my harsh words and actions harmed others. Jesus explained to me that it was my fury at the thought of my husband arriving late that evening from work that caused the heart attack, which resulted in my death. He showed me a time when I had turned my back on someone who needed my help, saying that I was a person consumed by my own desires and selfishness and that I lacked patience. The overwhelming sense of regret I felt for those occasions that I had hurt others cut me deeply during the life review. He explained to me how anger and bitterness are like poison that taints one's soul, as he reminded me of the grudges I held against others. Half expecting that Jesus was going to banish me from his presence for committing those sins, to my surprise, he offered me his love, forgiveness, and guidance. "You have to return to your life on earth to learn how to live with a heart filled with compassion and forgiveness and without anger and resentment," he explained. He said that I had to return if I wanted to one day return to be with him again in that heavenly realm. Jesus spoke to me about the current state of the world, explaining how the world was filled with so much evil, hatred, and idolatry. He revealed to me through a vision certain events that were yet to come to pass on earth, filling me with both wonder and trepidation. He explained how the world would undergo a reckoning in the form of a global crisis. He spoke of a time when the world would once again be consumed by the flames of war in a conflict so devastating that it would come to be known as World War III. His voice was filled with sorrow as he described the calamity and turmoil that would affect the entire planet. The gravity of his words hung heavily as he explained, while I tried to comprehend the enormity of all that he revealed to me, and my heart ached at the thought of such horrific events coming to pass. I saw that in World War III, 2 continents will begin to fight each other, and the war will spread to other countries. The world will be plunged into chaos and conflict on an unprecedented scale, he explained. Nations that once stood as allies will find themselves on opposing sides, and the very foundations of trust among nations will crumble. He described scenes of cities in ruin. He described how their once bustling streets will be reduced to rubble and dust, and the air of those cities will be filled with the acrid scent of smoke. He described how the deafening roar of explosions will be heard as the machinery of war unleashes its destructive power. I saw in those scenes of war that people were displaced from their homes and forced to flee from the horrors of war. I watched as families were torn apart, and I listened to the cries of innocent children pierce the air. What I saw made me weep uncontrollably. The consequences of the conflict extended far beyond borders, affecting the very balance of nature and the well-being of all living beings. The scars of World War III ran deep, leaving a legacy of pain and suffering. I then felt a gentle tugging sensation, which drew me away from the peacefulness and beauty that surrounded me. It was as if an invisible force was gently guiding me towards a new destination. I turned to Jesus with a mixture of confusion and apprehension. "What's happening?" I asked, my voice trembling. Jesus smiled warmly, his eyes filled with understanding. "Your journey here has served its purpose, and now you must go back," he replied. "Why do I have to go back?" I asked. "Let the world know I am coming back," he said. It was then that I suddenly felt an almost burdensome longing in the very depths of my heart that the souls of men should not perish in the sin of destroying one another in their quest for power but rather, use their wisdom to glorify God. It was then that I felt a gentle swirling motion surrounding me, and the beauty of the heavenly realm began to fade. It was as though I was being drawn through a tunnel of light and back towards earth. Returning to my body felt both surreal and exhilarating. I thank God for restoring life to my body and giving me a second chance. Already, I have recounted my experience to a group of people at the local church and whenever the opportunity presents itself, so that people can be forewarned and prepared for Christ's second coming.